Well, hey, we're just beyond the hour, Alwyn, so we'll kick in. Again, for everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You know, when this whole COVID thing kicked in, for me, it was important. And Alwyn, I'd love, to understand your perspective that we do as much as we can to support our community, whether that's supporting our clients, our athletes, or our fellow coaches. And we most certainly have done that within Irish Rugby in Ireland. I know you've done it with Results Fitness. So tonight is really, as it says on the tin, man, it's a coaching conversation. And for me and you, we've had a lot of these conversations at Perform Better. And I thought, what better forum than to bring this live and you and I can get into something that I know we're equally passionate about. So, I'm not calling this thing a podcast. I don't want it to necessarily feel like an interview, Alwyn. So, man, hit me with questions. I got some questions for you. But for everyone who is gracing us with their attention, listen, you can ask questions as well. There's a little Q&A box on your screen. Chuck them in there. As we go through, we'll just take a look at those questions. We'll definitely reserve time at the end. But if a question seems to be on point with what we're discussing, we'll float it in. So again, there's about 60 on the call. You're still floating in. Drop your questions in the Q&A. But Alwyn and I are going to kick in. We'll go for about 60 to 90 minutes. We'll see how the conversation goes. And I am recording this, and we'll share this on YouTube. And Alwyn will have it if he wants to share it on his platform as well. So Alwyn, thank you so much for joining me tonight, my man.
Cheers, lad. Been a while since I seen you. Rhode Island last year, right?
And you are looking good. You're looking good with the beard. I'm seeing your workouts on Instagram. I mean, you are walking inspiration. And then you got.
Well, I think there's only two ways to handle this, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's only
yeah, I went in there like, this is fight camp, right? I'm gonna just like. I've got time, like I've got no excuses, so I'll train, I'll grow a cool strength coach beard. Just it's stress you either it's beer and pies or it's circuits and running, right?
Oh, for sure. And so with that, man, I was curious just to kick off. We started to talk about it before the hour, and that is with the whole COVID thing. I know we have a lot of trainers worldwide. And you've already built this amazing reputation, in my mind, for being as much of a coach educator and a believer in coach development and developing your fitness business as you are just this amazing person for your coaches and your clients at Results Fitness. So talk us through just high level, man. What's been your approach to keep your business flourishing in this very challenging time?
So first of all, thank you for that nice compliment. I'll PayPal you a little something in a minute. So the first thing you got to realize is none of us really understand this. Like, we're not epidemiologists, but what we do understand is social isolation and lack of exercise, and everything about that is a negative, right? So in my approach has been is that the only thing that's changed is how I'm showing up.
Yeah.
I used to show up in person in a facility. Now I'm showing up, and we were talked about it. I hate the phrase virtually. Virtual reality to me meant fake reality. I'm showing up remotely through Zoom, through an app, through streaming classes. We stream a class, we record it, we put it up on our Facebook group so people can watch it on demand later. We have a Facebook group for Q&A. So my approach is the things that I know are that social isolation is going to be a real problem for people. And I can, it's not the same, but I can try to keep that community going with our guys. And that nothing gets better by you getting out of shape. Nothing. So I've got to show up like that. And it's I think Jim Collins always talked about the good is the enemy of the great. Don't stop when it's good. Wait until it's great and do things. And I think that's true nearly all the time, apart from now. I think now speed is the key. Good is good enough. Get things going, right? Reach out to your people. I know there's gyms in my town that they just closed, and some are able to still bill and some are stopped billing, but some are not reaching out to their people. They won't be there when you come back, and we will come back. That part I know. I don't know when that's going to happen, but
sure.
we will be back at some point, and you've got to be there for your people all the way through this. The only thing that's changed is how you're showing up, and I want to be really clear on that to people.
I absolutely love that. I love that because we haven't used it in that terminology, but in talking with our 35 S&C coaches we have who are supporting north of 500 rugby players throughout the country. Say what you will then about the domestic game. We've had to deal with the exact same thing. And I love that moving away from the term virtual. Again, we watched Tron last night with the kids. It does have that artificial sense, and we want it to feel real and authentic. So let me dig into this, because you do something remarkably well from what I've seen. And you've already used the C word, culture and community. And so you look to build something where even though a client might walk in as an N of one, an individual, they walk out of your facility, from what I can tell and what I understand, with a family of the coaches and of the other clients. And I love that. So maybe talk to us about how are you cultivating that community? Because it's one thing to put a workout and put programming out there that's still that one-to-one interaction, but how are you keeping that community feel amongst your clients?
Well, I think it starts with you taking like a backward step and start thinking about your core values, right? And there's a culture within every organization. And this is the part I don't think people realize. Like, how do I build a culture? There's a culture there. It's just out of control. Like, it's just a bacteria culture. It's grown by itself, right? But you can shape it, right, by having your core values in place. So one of mine is always been like to have fun and a sense of humor. And there's guys in fitness who are like, fitness is serious. There's no room for jokes. And I'm like, it's fine, but that's your value, right? That's your world. And you have to live that and make sure that your training is serious. And you're like, but I mean, I take it serious. I just don't make it serious. We have a good time. So it starts to, culture's dialed in. And I wish this was my quote. Culture's dialed in when an athlete coaches another athlete when the coach isn't there and says, that's not how we do things here.
Love it.
Right, when they shape the environment, and here's how we do it. And I heard something from Frank Dick from the UK that when you become part of the team, and that's when you join my gym, you're part of the team. You've been given the team colors, and that represents something. And it's your job to raise the standard, respect those that came before you, and hand it off to those that come after you. And that sounds great when you're talking about like Irish rugby or the All Blacks, that was your first game, right?
Yeah.
Like, Ireland versus All Blacks, very first game. I remember that. I was like, oh, that's a rough start. And I'm like, oh my God, I did it. But that idea is the same in your gym, is that like we ring a bell when anybody hits a PR. And it's like Pavlov's dogs, right? The bell rings and the whole gym cheers.
Yeah.
Because somebody just hit a PR, right? But the culture requires nurturing, right? The best way to describe it is if you keep goldfish, right? Or you keep any type of fish and the fish gets sick, you don't actually treat the fish. You change the water, you change the environment. Sure. So that environment has to be strong. And that's and this ties in with like, I can give you all our exercises. I can give you our workouts, and I can even give you our language of coaching tome that is now mandatory reading for all my coaches. And you can do everything that we do, and you can open across the street with shinier equipment at a lower price. And I still don't think I'll lose people because you don't have my culture. So right? Like, that's part of it.
So let's dig into that two levels, and just from the place we find ourselves right now then, and I'm gonna push you on this one. What are you trying to do to keep that community piece? So I get it. You need to have the culture, you need to have the foundation, but what are some tangible things that you guys are trying to do from a results fitness perspective with your clients right now to maintain that culture value of community?
So I'll do a few things, because anybody who tells you they have the answer right now is lying, because we're all learning in real time, right? Sure. So what we did is, first of all, I can tell you it was Monday the 16th and LA County gyms were staying open. And we did a video on Facebook to tell our clients at 2:30 that we were going to stay open until we're told we can't stay open, which came in at 3, right? That you're going to have to close. So right then we streamed the next class. And we put it on Facebook Live. And while the class was getting taught, I sat commenting on everybody who was watching it. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Nick. What's up? And I was just typing as someone else was teaching. Then we posted stuff in our group and we asked interactive questions. right? And then we realized that Facebook Live doesn't allow me to see the member or the client.
Yeah.
So we pivoted to Zoom, so they can put their videos on and we can actually coach a little bit. I'm not pretending it's as good as in person,
Sure.
but it's better than not seeing you move at all. But now they saw each other. And I leave it on for 5 minutes at the end so they can all talk to each other, right? So they're still talking and exchanging. Then what we were doing was with the clients, we call them MIAs, the ones that go missing in action and suddenly start to disappear, not check in. We would reach out. We'd reach out through text, email, their phone number. We reach out through a Facebook message, an Instagram message, any way we can, because they'll decide how they want to communicate right now. Like if I call them and they don't want to answer the phone, I'll never reach them. Maybe they want a text, maybe they want an email. So we reach out all those ways and we arranged a 15-minute one-on-one Zoom call with their coach. We just assigned the coaches.
Sure.
When that wasn't working, we put them on a Zoom call with the people they normally work out with.
Okay, there
so
we go.
they could have a little happy hour, right? So the idea was any way that I can keep showing up for these people. And also not just be about me and them, be about the team and them. And I'm like, hey, Nick, John's asking about you. Is it okay if I share your phone number with him?
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you what, I'm going to invite him on the next call. We'll get on together, right? And I'm like, or Johnny's missing. I'm like, hey, Nick, can you reach out to Johnny and tell him to come on one of these Zoom calls? He's not getting back to me. And that's my idea, is that we're trying to build a fence right now. Yeah. And part of that fence is community and we care, right? Like that's, we have our fences, you know, like recognition, community, we care, and like trust. Like it's this fence around our members, and any of the walls are down, that's where they get out, right? So right now it's again, we're not saying virtual, it's a remote wall. Yeah. I'm building a remote wall that I'm doing my best to keep the community, and I'm like, hey, I was right on it. Listen, I'm your science geek, guys. Here's some studies on vitamin D supplementation. Sorry, Ireland, vitamin D supplementation. I'm bilingual. I can speak both languages.
We have sun right now, Alan. We actually have sun, so the vitamin D gods have graced us with their presence.
They understood what they had to do. And that's, like I said, here's what you need with exercise. I posted something on Instagram this week that's been my most shared post ever, is why aren't we giving people exercise recommendations? If there was no benefit to exercise physically, there's no negative effects, so you may as well do it. And if there's no benefit physically, there's massive benefits with mental health.
Bingo.
Right? We've got to, like, we should be given these recommendations. And I have this personal philosophy. You're allowed to complain about something 3 times.
Okay.
On time number 3, that means you're the person to change the world.
Yep.
Right? You're the only person who's listening, so it's time for you. So I'm just going to keep shouting it from the rooftops. I don't understand COVID-19. I was calling it COVID-19 in the beginning. That's how little I knew about it. But I do understand that socialization can be brutal. When I was in the hospital, again, for those of you who don't know, I had a stem cell transplant a few years ago. And I was the sick one who had to be quarantined. I was the at-risk one, which makes sense. Quarantining the healthy doesn't make sense, but I'm not getting political right now. But that part, I can tell you, and I remember telling you afterwards, that physically it's tough, but psychologically, that was the rough part. Yeah, that social complete isolation. But we've got technology and we can embrace it, and we can do whatever we can. And it's not the same. It's not the same as a real high five or a fist bump. But that part is out of our control. Yeah. But what is in our control is showing up. We're doing a Zoom call with our coaches every morning. Every morning we do a Zoom call, and because sometimes they're having a hard time.
For sure.
Right? They're doing the same thing, you know. So it's my role always is Rachel and I being the owners of the company. My primary role is to take care of my team. Yeah. And their role is to take care of the members, and that's how I think of it. But if you're listening to this and you're just a coach working yourself, or you have a small team, then that's your job, is to take care of your people, right? Like, we're limited with the workouts. There's some things we can't do right now, but this is what separates us, right? This is what separates us, is our ability to adapt and to improvise, and it's my like. I think this is where you get, like, leaders shine, right?
Yeah,
This is where you
that's true.
show up. Like, it's an adversity where leaders show up, right? And this is it, you know. I wish it
Love
was
it.
different. I
I
wish
love,
we were
no,
just
for
out in the
sure.
park timing kids split times and back to normal.
But you even said something before we kicked off, and that is that there's been some lessons learned in this process that you might want to carry it forward. And I can speak openly from an Irish rugby perspective. There are habits now that we are developing, albeit digitally, that we could equally do face to face. Like, wow, we should have this specific meeting more often, or we
Yeah.
should communicate in this way with our players more often. So for you and Rachel and the team at Results Fitness, what are some of, let's say, the lessons learned that are going to stay with you once you get back into, call it normal, if normal ever exists again?
So well, here's something that I got from Brendan Bouchard on that. One of the phrases that kind of irritates me is the new normal.
Yeah.
Well, 2 years ago, things were changing.
Sure.
And 2 years before that, we're always in this process of change, right? And we have to embrace that. So, like, the new normal is not a negative phrase. It was, if COVID-19 hadn't shown up, there would be a new normal because things would change.
Absolutely.
But what it has done for us is as we were talking before this, I was an old school guy. We'd do our workouts on Microsoft Excel and then print them out with little boxes where I could record the loads and an area for notes. And we've been doing that for years. And we had a storage cabinet full. Every workout that's ever been done at Results Fitness was recorded. I had a storage cabinet full, and we had 2 filing cabinets in the gym packed. Like, anybody who'd been in the last year of their workouts, like each like few weeks was a piece of paper. So I had at least the last year for everybody. We'd been looking for an app or a technology for a while. Yeah. So we're using the Bridge Athletic right now to do our programming. So that's here to stay. But that just allows us the chance to do things remotely. Yeah. Like, you don't have to be a member right now. The streaming classes allows us, if someone's traveling, then maybe they don't freeze their membership, right? They can still train online, or you just can't make it in. Like, maybe we're all appointment only going forward and you can't come in at that time. Well, I'm not limited by how many people can do that from a distance perspective. So all this stuff's going to stay. This short call, this 15-minute call with the coach seems to be really popular. And I'll be honest, there may be an upgrade to a membership to keep that going, or you may exchange something for it. One thing that we're looking at is that, and I advise this for coaches, when you add something, can you continue to keep it going? Because you don't want to take anything away. And I want we're using the phrase remote. We've always done remote coaching. Like, I work with an obstacle course racing team, and I don't supervise their mile repeats. Yeah. They just send me their times and their heart rates. Like, we program it. So that's working remotely, even though I see these people, right? I see them during the week. This is just, it extended a little bit. So I think that stuff will continue. Our way of delivering it will evolve. But what we have is I think that the remote piece now has to be good enough to stand on its own, right? It's not just an adjunct to the in-person training, although that's very valuable, that you should be able to, if you're in Ireland and you want to join Results Fitness, we should be able to do that. And it should be a good product, right? When we were first doing it on Facebook Live, we were filming off of an iPhone. And it's good enough for the first 2 weeks. And then I'm like, you know what? We're actually billing people. We have to take this up a notch, right? Everything has to be pro. Like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it pro, right? Like, when we added group exercise to Results Fitness with the larger groups, I didn't want to do it until I was better than anybody in town. Yeah. Like, until I had heart rate monitoring and I could just do it better. And that's how I feel about the remote coaching is we're going to be great at this. Right, we're going to evolve. So this is going to stay. And I think it might be like, imagine a kid comes in and they can only afford to work at your facility twice a week with you. Yeah, yeah. Well, what if for an extra, a few euros, see how I did that? Just seamlessly transitioned in currency.
Bilingual.
For a few euros, they could either have a live class with a coach who can correct a group at once, or maybe it's an on-demand type thing where here is a generic sounds horrible, but it sometimes a generic workout is great. All my books are generic workouts, right?
Yeah.
Like, but they're better than winging it. They're better than doing it on your own. Not as good as me in person, not as good as like online where I can correct you, but better than you just winging it. So I think there's going to be levels of how we deliver our product. And I think anything we've added is here to stay.
So one thing that's been thrown my way on the remote coaching piece is that people now more than ever, because they can't do any kind of kinesthetic cueing, they can't come up and touch or manipulate, they can't even pivot on the drill as easily. If they see someone struggling, it's much harder to say, okay, stop. I need you to go over there and grab that. Yeah, no, yeah, that one in the corner, bring it over. So for you, what has remote coaching taught you about coaching in general, positive or negative?
There's the thing, right? Like when I was first starting to and this is my long testimonial for Nick Winkelmann's book. When I was competing in Taekwondo, I realized quite young that Taekwondo is the same. Like nobody's learning a different one than I'm learning, right? Same with boxing. There's 4 punches, yet Floyd Mayweather executes differently. So I realized then, this is what kind of got me into sports science, is my ability to execute these techniques was a competitive advantage, not the techniques itself. The ability to execute them, which led me to sports science and strength training and fitness and speed development. And I think that's what happened with coaching is like, right, here's my workout. It's squats, push-ups, and dumbbell rows. But my ability to cue and coach those exercises is going to be the difference maker with an inferior coach, which is what you just revolutionized and brought to the table, right? Is that like little things that turn your hips to the wall makes it worse. Or turn your hips to your right makes it worse to have your belt buckle face the wall. Yeah. You're like, it's so dramatic that you almost don't believe it, right? But this is what makes you a better coach. Like external cueing, that piece alone makes you such a superior coach. So the first thing that remote coaching does, it exposes a lot of coaches, right? Because you don't actually know how to coach. You just grab arms and twist them into place, right? Now you've got to cue, and you can't even almost sometimes demonstrate from this platform. Like I don't have the same equipment as all that our clients have, that I can just jump up and go, all right, Sarah, let me explain how to do this. So this is how do you cue when the only cue you may have is an auditory cue? Yeah. Right. And this is like, especially in I think a good example is a mixed martial arts match or a taekwondo match where my coach may be behind me and I'm facing my opponent and can't take my eyes off him. And I've got to be cued completely auditory, right? So this is like, we just, as everybody knows, there's 3 ways, right? Like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic just went away when you're coaching virtually, and possibly visual became limited, right? But here's what's going to happen. The game just get elevated. Good coaches are going to adapt and pivot. Like that's one of the challenges Pete Dufal, like Eric Cressy's business partner, goes, try to do a day right now as a business owner without saying pivot. It's impossible, right? Or saying unprecedented times.
Yeah, it is the word of the month for sure.
Like we pivot in these unprecedented times, right? So that's like you've now your coaching skill set, like, and I like to be positive. It got reduced. Yeah. Your strengths got reduced and your weaknesses got magnified. But if you've got the language of coaching available at languageofcoaching.com, we have a resource for that, right? And you've got the time, so get on your game.
And so let's spend some time looking at this idea, not the language of coaching directly yet, but you said something really interesting earlier, and you hear it thrown around all the time, but very rarely do people dig into it. And you said, listen, you have 9 best-selling books, and you have a 10th coming out, which we'll talk about here in a little while. And so you have these books on programming. But like you said, you could go down the street. You could share the program, the reps, the sets. You'd probably even share the blueprint of your facility. You give them all of the what. But you said yourself, that's not going to allow them to separate. It's how Alan does it. It's how Rachel does it. It's how Craig does it at Results Fitness and your team that separates. So maybe talk to us. What does What does that look like for you? What is the how of coaching compared to what? What is your personal philosophy on that? And what are those ingredients that make what you do special, let's say non-repeatable, even if you have the cookbook?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it that a lot of people miss, is that you can see that there's only 4 punches in boxing, right? Like, I can
Love
show
it.
you them right
Yeah.
now and you'll be good, right? You're ready to fight. Like, and probably not. Like, it requires more than that. So I first of all, I think that in personal training, perhaps, and I mean that, like, respectfully, because sometimes we use that term as a negative, and I think everybody who's doing this as a pro is a pro, right? That and you'll hear these things, oh, if a client doesn't do what I tell them, I fire them. And like, so let's think about that. We put a client on a nutrition plan and they don't follow it, and we get rid of them because they can't follow it. Like, what do you do when a client doesn't follow your advice? What if it was crap advice?
Yeah.
That's the first part, right? Like, I can give anybody something they can't do. There's no skill in that, right? And there's a phrase, I think it's from the book Aspire. A coach, by definition, is literally a vehicle that takes someone from one place to another,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a position of honor that someone has
Servitude.
chosen me to help them with their goals, and basically said, here's my goals in my hand, and they've put them in my hand, and like, will you take me there? Like, you have an obligation to do that the best you can. And it's the exercises is a thing, it's a piece of it, but it's like, that's the like, I hate saying the least important. It's not unimportant. It's all important. But as we touched on, the culture that I deliver that, and the coaching and how I deliver it, that's the magic, right? Like, it's the
Absolutely.
you get that athlete, you get that rugby player who will run through a brick wall for you because they believe so much in what you've done together. Like, that's how I feel about my clients. I won't rest until they get their goals, right? It's on me, right? It's on, like, anybody who doesn't, like, the first part is, you ever seen like the before and after pictures where the client, that the trainer takes all the credit? And I'm like, what about that girl who hasn't lost any weight? You're like, oh, she doesn't follow my advice. I'm like, okay, so you're to blame for the good results, and you're to blame, not to blame for the bad results. That's not a coach, right? That's a coincidence, right? Your goal is to coach everybody. So but it really starts with this like, recognition that it's a real position of honor. It's not a commercial transaction. They can choose anybody they want, and they chose me, and we'll do this together. And I'll give you everything I've got. Like, I won't rest until you get to where you are. And that, at one point, I thought it was 'cause I would learn the cool exercises. And if only I had a cable machine, everybody would get better results, right? If I only had heart rate monitoring, and now it all got taken away, right? But here we are with the situation where I'm like, what I still can do is try to hold on that culture. And what I can do is still coach. And I just keep saying this phrase, keep showing up for your people, right? They're looking around, like, they're looking around for someone to lead them, and just, listen, I got you right now. Right, I got you right now. And I keep telling them, they'll message me, man, I'm gaining weight, I'm losing strength. I'm like, you just hold it. You come back to me at 70% of where we left, and we're in great shape. Right. I had one girl, she trained for American Ninja, and she was in the best shape of her life. And that day it got cancelled. The night she was supposed to compete, it got cancelled, and she just devastated. And your goal now is not to, she doesn't want to stop training because, like, she needs a break, but she doesn't want to stop training. My goal is just to keep her, like, just keep checking in. She likes to check in on Instagram DM. That's how we're checking in. That's how we're going to do it, right? But my goal is, there's a little part where there's a time for an authoritative coach to push and yell and push them. And it's a time to be side by side with your arm around them, and that we're doing this together. And now it's that time. Right, that's the thing is, so it's just get back to understand they can choose anyone they want. Like, Irish rugby don't have any choice. Once you get picked to the Irish squad, you got Nick Winkelman. Too bad. You're getting
You're
the
right.
man,
You're
right?
100%.
At our level, they
They
can
get to
choose to
choose.
go somewhere else,
Absolutely.
and just take that seriously, right? Take that obligation seriously. I think it's a tremendous gift when someone does that to you, and you owe it to them to show up as the best coach you can be. The delivery system is changing right now, but that means you got to sharpen your game. Can see at the end of this, some gyms and coaches aren't going to make it, right? And those that do are going to be the good ones. And that means it's going to be more competitive. So you have to be even better then. Which brings me back. Make sure you pick out the language of coaching.
Well, whatever you were going to send me on PayPal, we'll go ahead and just keep it in your pocket there, Alan. You said something there that triggered a thought, and that is this whole idea, are they failing to understand, or are you failing to teach? I mean, so often, and this is especially dominant in sport, coaches talk about, this is my style. This is the way that I coach. And if you can't adapt to me in the way that I coach, then you're right. Get on the sideline or get out of my gym. It's not my problem. And I think more than ever, especially in sport and general population alike, it's that ability to say, well, hold on. It's not about you. You've signed up to be a servant. You've signed up to be a guide. It's their journey. They're the one that's climbing the Everest, not you. And so how do you get out of your mind and into theirs? And how do you seek to connect and coach within their mind is something that I always talk about. And so how do I start to take their words, their phrases, their experiences, and then loop them back around when I describe how to perform a movement, when I help them overcome a problem, when I help them nudge their behavior? Because ultimately, Alan, when you're talking to me and everyone who's listening, you're coming at it through your experience, through your perceptions, through your words, your phrases, not mine. And even in a discussion, if people are keen listeners, they're going to observe someone reiterate a point in different terms, in their own words, to get confirmation. Is that what you meant? Ultimately, we should not care about the words that we use. We need to care about the meaning that those words share. And so if I need to mirror you and use your language, use your experiences to help you get better at this task, then that's what I should be up for. And ultimately, one of my mentors called that your ability to be a chameleon. So do you feel, Alan, we are good enough yet in our industry at being chameleons for our clients and our athletes?
It's something we aspire to be.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, you talked about certain coaches have a style and everybody has to fit in that style. I'll be positive here and go, that's actually a reasonable coach who understands this is the only way I know how to coach, so I can only work with certain people. That's a good coach. A bad coach is, I don't know how to coach anybody. Yeah. A great coach is like, I can work with, and I'll use a physical example, a frail grandmother and an ultimate fighter. Yeah. And I change, right? I change. Like I remember Valerie Waters saying years ago, if you look at the cover of Women's Health and Men's Health, one will say rock hard abs and one will say flat toned tummy, but it's the same workout. Yeah. Like they're doing marketing to communicate to the actual market. We can go a step further and we can listen to how people, they actually, if you listen enough, and everybody's heard this, but everybody's heard it, but do they hear it, right? Yeah. You've got 2 ears and 2 eyes for a reason, and 1 mouth for a reason, right? That's 4 times the input for the output. They'll tell you how they like to be cued. You'll see things, and it's your job to adapt to that. What's really hard is to do that within a single session with 2 different coaching types. When you're doing one-on-one and you're like, all right, here comes John. This is how we coach him. I first got this. I was teaching, I was in, I remember it was a Friday, and my brother was coming over from Scotland to visit me, and I had to go to the airport to pick him up. And I was finishing up in the gym, and someone was doing push jerks. And I just remember trying to say, like, I was using this dip, drive, and drop. So you catch. That's what I kept saying. Dip, drive, whole body, and drop.
Triple D.
And it just, like, they weren't getting it, right? And I was like, all right. And I didn't have an appointment with them. I was just trying to help them at the time. Then I had to leave. So I'm driving, and I realized I left my wallet at the gym. So I drive back, pull in, go into the office to get my wallet. And this guy is nailing it. And I was like, what happened? And he pointed to one of my coaches and he goes, oh, he told me that you get under the bar at the end. I'm like, that's what I said, right? But that's not what he heard, right? Because, and sometimes, and that's the beginning, is if you don't really understand coaching, maybe one of your other coaches, ask them to cue it and just see if there's if you can't identify how this client is learning. Like I said, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. If you don't know, we got to go all three, right? We got to go all three at the start. But sometimes it's asking one of your colleagues, just jump in here. I want to see how you, and I'll ask coaches this all the time. Hey, back when it was remember the 5 meals a day, intermittent fasting was bad. You had to eat 5 meals a day, which is not actually found out not to be true, yet was the only thing we all agreed upon, right? But I'll ask another coach, how do you communicate that to your people? Yeah. Like, I want to hear how you communicate these things. How do you communicate for us for years, that is the single leg RDL was always ended up being a forward lean and not a posterior weight shift, yeah. Right? Like, so I was always like, how do you communicate that? But if I wish we could just have somebody in that we could like a couple of people we could coach right now.
Yeah.
They'll tell you how they want to be coached if you're paying attention, right? Like, so coaching is not just output, it's an input and output. It's a constant exchange.
So zoom us in, you're very good at using colorful language and putting the picture. Walk us through how you, Alwyn, do that. What are you looking for? Are you basing it off body language? Are you asking the client questions? Hey, did this make sense? Like, talk to us about the how of coaching related to your craft.
So if I don't know them and I haven't identified it, we go 3 ways. I will tell them what I'm going to do. I will visually demonstrate that, and then I will work them through, and I can do kinesthetic cues. But if I'm talking and the client starts to nod, right, they're responding auditory.
Beautiful.
Right, like I know that the people that really succeed in like traditional schooling are people that can learn that way by just listening to a teacher, right? Other clients will get up as I'm demonstrating and they'll move around me, right? Yeah. And they're looking for visual cues, right? They'll move around me. Other ones will just stand like this until I put them into position, right? But then I always ask back, explain it back to me, right? That's the one thing I do in the beginning. Just explain it back to me. And then I'll tell you one thing. This is like a ninja Jedi trick. And I've done this
we love these. Yes.
I've done this at a Perform Better. Is I've been teaching something to the group. I'll be teaching something like a one-on-one and demonstrating to the group. And the demonstrator, the person that I'm coaching, gets it wrong. Yeah. And there's always a little like giggle amongst the audience, course, right? Of course. You got to own it right away. So first thing, I'll stop this and go, guys, I apologize. I'm a terrible coach because I forgot to say this and I forgot to do this because I want to take it right off of this person. It's nothing. They didn't, as you said, they didn't not understand it. They understood perfectly what they think I said. Yes. I didn't explain it well enough. Yeah. Right? I didn't find the right cue. And that can be challenging. And you get 40 people you've never met before and you got to teach quickly. Right? So that can be challenging, but it's still on you. But you look for the recognition in their face. Right? And this is what something is hard with doing a webinar, is that if I do a webinar, it's just a PowerPoint on my screen. I can say something and I don't see the audience. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm at a Perform Better and I see someone go, huh? I'm like, all right, I'm going to stick with this a little longer. Somebody didn't get it. Exactly. You understand that coaching it's something you do with someone, not something you do to someone. Yeah, so if you don't know what to do, we're going to demonstrate, explain what we're doing. If you're really struggling, I like correct, not correct, correct. Right. I like when someone's doing something a little bit wrong, I like the positive cue, reference Nick Winkelman. They're not lifting their knees high enough. I'm like, hey, great job. Keep lifting those knees high. Yeah, bingo. Like I hate saying reverse psychology, like it's trickery, but it changes the attention, right? It brings their attention to that. And the other part is when you first learn this, you're going to overcoach. Yeah. Right. The example that I learned from you in Chicago probably 12 years ago is the lateral raise, where you just resist the arm. Right. And then you face and count backwards. Like, I've done that so much, Nick. The next time you do that, people will accuse you of stealing it from me. Yeah, probably. But I'll watch my young coaches do this. I'm like, you just gave that lady, that's a single joint exercise and you gave her 12 cues. And she hasn't even tried it yet. She hasn't even tried it. You've got nothing to correct. So it's understanding this. I'm looking for a glimmer with the athlete that this is how they learn. It will be nodding if it's auditory. It will be there'll be a physical gesture if it's visual, if they see something, and they'll be starting moving around you and like they're trying to get the dumbbell off of you so they can try it out already, right? They're the person that in the back of a, if you teach something to a group, they're the person in the corner who are trying to do the kettlebell swing, right, as they're listening to you, right? Those people they learn by doing, right? Not everybody does. No, I don't believe anybody learns exclusively one way or the other, but there's a dominant style, right?
Exactly.
You can't have a dominant coaching style. It is coaching for that athlete style is the part that becomes dominant.
And
we're going to some high level stuff right now,
no,
kids.
this is good. This is good. So if I can jump in then, especially in the theme of the remote coaching piece. And so I love what you've done there is you've just used your observational skills and your active listening just to simply see how your client responds to different type of information, visual information, verbal information, or you getting hands-on. And so assuming someone right now is doing remote coaching with someone that they have a bit of a pulse on those features, I would argue that even within your language, you can upregulate certain elements to the visual, to the kinesthetic, and to more of the auditory. And so if you have someone that's really visual, I'd probably argue that you could use stories. If you can get up, use demonstration, use analogies. But with the technological medium, even have a few little videos. You can pull them up right there on the screen and say, hey, it kind of looks like this. And if it's a little bit fantasy based, to kind of get the creative juices flowing for that visual person, that's going to make it stickier.
Stories always work.
Bingo.
Stories and analogies work really well.
For everybody. The other thing is if you have someone that's more kinesthetic, I would argue that if you use a lot of examples, so we're talking about the squat, and you're performing a squat, well, hey, I need you to squat down like you're picking up your children. Or, hey, you used to play basketball. I need you to squat down as if you're going up for a dunk. And even though we're using words, we're actually using a kinesthetic comparison. We're taking a movement that they're very familiar with, that their body has rehearsed over and over again, assuming you know that because you've gotten to know them, and you're using that as the mental comparison. And then for people that are more verbal, any of these tactics should work anyway, as long as you're embedding them from a story perspective. So,
I think you can use your language as you're touching upon and to become kinesthetic.
Bingo. That's it.
Without touching. I've got and also finding that I had a taekwondo guy that we're trying to do a medial hurdle hop, right? Single leg just for clarification, we use the same nomenclature. Jumps are 2 foot to 2 foot, hops are 1 foot to 1 foot, bounding is 1 foot to the other foot, right? So we use medial hops. He's jumping towards his inside off of his right leg. He's moving to the left, right? Just stumbling all over the place. He's a taekwondo fighter. And I was like, hey, Todd, this is like, there's a technique in taekwondo where you're kicking as you slide forward with your foot, right? Called a jabbing side kick. And I goes, it's a jabbing side kick. And he's like, oh, ding, 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 ding. Does it perfectly, right? Like, and that's an auditory cue, right? And I didn't demonstrate it, but it becomes kinesthetic because he can anchor what that movement feels like in his world, like the basketball or picking up your kid, right? Or like my RDL one was you're shutting the laundry room door with your butt, right?
Bingo. And so when you look at this stuff, it's when you look at your own path, Alwyn, was it trial and error that you came upon these ideas? Was it observing other great coaches? Because let's be honest, people can go and buy a book on program design. They can go and buy books on biomechanics and kinesiology. But what we're talking about here is far more intuitive, nuanced, subtle, and changes far more often because of all these individual characteristics of the clients and the athletes we work with. So two-part question for you. One, how have you developed that craft of how you coach? And what's your approach to developing or support the development of it with your trainers, with your coaches at Results Fitness?
There's a softball for your book, isn't it? So
because you've been doing, in fairness, you've been doing this, you've been thinking about this before I ever wrote the book.
So I'll give you credit. You were a big accelerator for us because with some of the stuff that you'd identified with Gabrielle Wolf and stuff, that the external cueing was and I tried to prove you wrong on it. I'll have that story coming up in a second, right? That on external cueing, because at first to me it just applied to movement and not necessarily to fitness training, but we'll get back to that. But it was that idea, and I may have gotten this phrase from Al Vermeil, who gave somebody the Bulls strength program, and they're like, "You sure you want me to have this?" And he goes, "That's just exercises on a piece of paper. Without me, it's not a whole lot there." Right? And so I was understood that the culture was a big difference, and I said my ability to coach, right? My taekwondo lesson is the ability to deliver these techniques better was my advantage. And then when I went in this as a commercial enterprise as coaching, is that I could literally take anybody's programs and do them with my clients and maybe not get as good a result because I wasn't as good a coach yet.
Yeah.
Right? I couldn't cue as well. I couldn't get the buy-in. I couldn't get the trust. So it was just my way of trying to develop myself. And what I did in the beginning is, and this is one of these things you wish you'd kept. At the end of every workout I did when I started on one-on-one, because that's how everybody started, I forced myself to write a 100-word summary of the session. Right? Now, at the end of the year, you've got a thesis. And I would write down like what didn't work. Like I tried to get this push up and it wasn't working. And I could tell quickly when something was a technical issue and not a physical weakness, right? Like I could tell it wasn't somebody's hips lagging in a push up isn't strength. It's they think that's how it's supposed to work, right? That you'll see a lot of young basketball players whose knees collapse when they jump. And some of that was they learned how to jump when they were physically weak. And that's the pattern they learned, right? So it was a physical weakness, but it's become a technical learned thing. So it was really just this understanding of my ability to communicate, and that's all coaching is at some level, is communication, was going to be a commercial difference maker. Like, go see that guy. He will get you in shape faster than anybody else in town.
Just to interrupt you here by design, was that something, because I get this question all the time, not a lot of coaches come to that conclusion. Like, sure, if you present to them communication is important, they'll all say, well, duh, yeah. But behaviorally, it's not like they've pursued the craft of communication the way that you have there. I mean, case in point, doing a 100-word debrief for yourself after every session. That's an extreme, albeit a positive step to evaluate yourself in how you coach alongside what you coach. What drove you to that? I mean, was there a moment? Was there a stimulus? Why did you become aware of something that so many coaches seem to forget or is invisible to them?
So I think everyone has a primary question that drives them forward, and some people it can hold them back. That what will people think of me if I do that, right? And it'll hold them back. Mine has always been is, why am I so bad at this? Right? Like, why am I so like how does this client get in shape and the other client doesn't get in shape, and this client's telling everybody about me because I'm so good, and this client's ready to quit because I'm so bad at this. Like, what am I doing differently? I'm doing the same thing with both of these clients, and one client is getting results and one client is. It's not about me, it's about the client is different. And you can take two paths here. That client is to blame, or this coach has had an inability to adapt to the different environment, because that style of coaching or that program or whatever we want to call it only worked with this type of person. It wasn't you're a great coach. This was a great fit, right? And as a good coach, you realize, well, I only can work with people like this, right?
By
And
chance, not choice. By chance.
Yeah, and it's hopefully I like the phrase. This is results by design, not by coincidence, right? I'm trying to pursue a a result, and then you realize that I'm not getting it done, that the only common factor between these two clients is their coach,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I don't want it to say that some coaches get this, but they, as you said, they don't get it. But it's this constantly questioning of yourself is, why are you so terrible at this? Like, how can you be better? Like as America has an obesity problem, and we actually are amazing at weight loss. Everything we do works. We're just terrible at weight maintenance. Why is that? Why can't we change behavior? Because we assume that weight maintenance is just weight loss, not as much. You just back off, but it's completely different behaviors, right? It's completely different advice. So to answer your question, it was just this idea that, right, if everything else is the same, and it's little things like that push jerk example where I didn't see what was different, but they heard something different and it worked instantaneously and it clicked. But it's just, are you truly auditing yourself? Like, are you truly auditing your program? And this is a great time to do it when you're closed down, is to look at your programming, look at your curriculum and start question everything that you've done, right? Start, like, we went through our gym and threw out equipment that wasn't getting used a lot, right? Because it looks like clutter, and right now we have to look clean, right? But it's just time. There's never been a better time to question everything that you've done than right now. But that's always been my case. And I just remember it was one of those seminars that you did where you gave me 72 examples of internal versus external cue, and 72 times external cue one. And I went, there may be something to this, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so when you now look at needing to take your experiences as a coach, whether it was genetics, disposition, chance, or choice, you came to this conclusion that you are a variable, and you as a variable, it's how you coach. It's how you connect. It's how you deliver the program, as Al Vermeil talked about. How do you carry that forward in results fitness and in what you're trying to do and share with the world? Because again, I still believe that it is a gap that needs filling, and it needs a lot of people. It needs more than the language of coaching and Nick Winkelman. It needs a lot of people to get behind this, because I don't want this to be by chance that they fall upon, hey, I need to be more self-reflective in how I coach. So how are you paying it forward?
So the first start is you got to get buy-in from my young coaches. It starts locally and then it goes globally. So the first step is I will show that if I trained that client, would I get a better result than you're getting? And nearly always they say yes. And I'm like, now why is that? Because it's the same program in the same facility with the same equipment. And they're like, you're a better coach than me. But they don't think about it as what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
They think about it as my skills on exercises. That's how they see it. And so I start saying it, so if I taught you how I would do this, would that be useful? And then they get the buy-in that it's not the dumbbell row, it's everything else that goes into it. I think you're right. And I think it's just, right now we're like, a training certification starts with basic anatomy and physiology, and then really it just hinges upon exercise technique.
Yeah.
And we really don't touch on programming. And then there's this idea that the language of coaching, great title for a book, is an advanced skill. It might be right there with exercise technique. And in fact, I could make a case that before you decide what you're going to teach, we should learn how to teach, right? How to coach, right? You want to be a martial arts instructor, there's an understanding that you know martial arts. If you want to teach swimming, basketball, and so on, right? That there's an understanding of that skill. But perhaps this is an earlier module than it is right now. Right now, there's only advanced people seeking this out, which gives you, for those of you listening, it's a huge competitive advantage. And I'll be honest, part of my questioning is, why does that trainer make more money than me? Why are they getting more clients than me? Why are they getting better results than me? Like, where are the limitations and where are the holes in my game? And I'll agree with you. I think most coaches are the ones that are taking the time, the 59 participants who are taking time out of the day to listen to us, you guys are probably black belt level coaches, but some of the science is on the actual, how to coach is still new, right? Like not new for you who's just immersed the last decade of your life into it, Nick, but it's still new for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Like I
sure.
said, is I can remember thinking, and I think you were doing a PB with Rachel and texting both of you and going, would an internal cue make this exercise metabolically harder? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, then I might get better results with an internal cue, which is the logic, right? I just made the lighter weight harder. I just made the cardio session harder. But what I made harder was the perception of it. It didn't, like, by having the external cue, I could get a better performance. I could lift more weight for more reps, and that translated to more results. So I was proved. I was not proved wrong. Nick was proved correct by my. I'm not cynical with stuff. I always have questions, and I always want to like. I'm at a point with a lot of people. You tell me something, I'm just going to believe it. But I do want to try it out for me.
Absolutely.
Like I do want to experience it, and it's so annoying that I spent so many years doing it the wrong way. Right? How many people that I need to write apology letters to who I took their money and I wasn't a great coach, right? Like you just little language, like the in your book again, I did it looks like DC Comics. It's beautiful how that book turned out, right? With
so that was the inspiration. Is we wanted a, you know, well, actually the inspiration in terms of the vibe was DC Comics. But I went right back. The way I explained it to the designers, I said, have you ever seen the first Mary Poppins where Bert and Mary Poppins and the two kids, they jump into the chalk drawing? And at the time, this was like crazy technology whenever it was. I think it was the 50s or 60s when they did it. Like, that's the kind of feel I want. I want a real person doing a real movement that was dynamically shot, but I wanted to capture something that's a bit whimsical, because that's the human imagination.
The one with the acceleration drill where it's like the carpet up behind them. The track. That's beautiful, man.
It is. No. Absolutely. And these are the kind of things, again, I've since seen that stimulate ideas where people are creating their own infographics. And why not use those for your remote coaching? Even, why not have your cue cards when you're working with people face to face? Who says that we just have to use our language?
Well, we have that with when we write it's, and when we're talking about like cueing now, if we're doing this stuff remotely, if you learn all your cues, I used to write ebooks. Like I was selling ebooks a long time ago with training programs, and the idea to put a picture into a Word document would change the formatting for the entire thing, right? You put it, I'm going to write the text here and put the picture of the exercise there, and the whole thing changes, right? You have no excuses anymore. You can do stuff on your phone in real time, right? Your clients can video themselves doing something, and you can get back to them. We embrace the technology at this point. And so when we explain how to do a dumbbell curl, if we had to write it out, right, with no video, we would write out how to do the movement, right? Or how to do the lateral raise, or how to do the drill. We write out the cues. But what we started adding is common errors, right, that clients may do, and like example cues. They're all external. And when we're teaching our younger coaches, we have them like, I want you to come up with your own cues that don't reference the internally at all. It doesn't reference the human body at all. And it becomes real growth for them, because they start thinking about that like right away. And they'll start catching each other out when they're training. There'll be a game. Like if you catch them using an internal cue, it's a point, right? Like, and it becomes a game, right? Where you're like,
internal cue, bingo.
I don't want you to look up what you think the cue for this drill is. I want you to create it, right? Because it's not like, it's fluid. It's a system that we're going to grow and develop over time. It's not like this is how you cue a step up, right? Like, do not deviate.
Are you a collector of cues that just simply have been passed down around the campfire for generations? Or are you a craftsman, a craftsperson of cues? And that's been the big thing. I mean, you've written now, it'll be 10 books on program design, and I'm now entering into that realm of one book on cue design. Because like you said, they're two sides of the same coin. I need to have a movement.
Yours is, there's a lot of program design books out there. There's not a whole lot of cues books out there, right?
There's not. And my hope is that the reality is many books now, I will hope, could take the model that we outline in the language of coaching and say, you know what, I'm going to take that. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. And I'm just going to use that to inform how I actually outline cues for the movement. Because let's be honest, we're both published with Human Kinetics. And I talked to Human Kinetics about this. For the longest time, you'd see the image, as you said, and these 10 steps of how to perform a movement, as if that's how we as humans perform movement, thinking step 1, extend 10 degrees, step 2. That's not how it is going. So those steps are for us as the coach to know. It's for us to have an indication of what the movement looks like in common errors. There's another column that needs to go next to that. Now, if that's what the movement needs to look like, how do I actually communicate that? And that's the biggest thing I'm hoping the language of coaching does, is it's a catalyst for all of the great what books, the training books, the movement books, to add this layer in and to add the column that needs.
Well, I think the layer needs to come in earlier than it is my thing. Is it's an earlier step, and like I said, there's a feeling that it's advanced right now. Right, but it's really, it should be very, very basic, and hopefully the people listening to this, you've got teams of young coaches that we're I wrote something this morning on Instagram about the supersetting system, like 1A 1B, where you go back and forth with exercises. That's like, it's so normal now. My younger coaches didn't understand we ever did straight sets. It's become the norm because it's so much more efficient. That I think the norm of external cueing and how to do this, how to teach an exercise, how to teach movement is going to become standard practice. It's when I first wrote New Rules of Lifting, which is 2004, we'll still get Amazon reviews now that like, nothing new here. I'm like, I hope not. It's 16 years old. Like I hope it's not shocking that I'm talking about movements, not muscle groups, right? That I'm hoping one day that the idea, look, like, remember we used to do like feel the burn, focus on the bicep, right? We used to do that. So I think it's going to come in earlier. And my goal is that we develop, and I like that idea as if a collector of ideas versus like a craftsman or a craftsperson, because if I give you the exercise and the program that I would do and how I would cue it, the very best you can hope for is to match me. And as a coach coming up under me, I want you to surpass me. I want you to take this and learn, like, what if I tweak that? How do I come up with my own, the exercise may evolve, the programming may evolve, but man, we're not even touching the cueing part still. We're not even touching how to communicate.
So let's dig into this one layer deeper. And this layer only revealed itself to me as I probably got 5-6 years down studying this stuff. And that was early on, the cue was just about connecting the person to the movement and helping them to move better. But over time, as I looked at cueing as a craft, as a skill, and one that I wanted to be able to deploy in real time, to adapt, to pivot to the person in front of me, I started to notice that even though I was still cueing movement, and that was the main thing that changed in my coaching, all of a sudden I started building better relationships. That it's almost like by helping them understand how to move better in the process, the bonus prize was better connection between me and the client because they were having a better learning experience. So I wonder if you've had a similar epiphany, so to speak, that the cueing is more than just making them move better. Through the way we use language, it's an exact conduit to make better connections and relationships.
100%, because it's remember they came to you for a result. And anything that improves that result or it shortens the time taken to get that result builds the relationship as you as a coach. A better coach becomes more trusted. And this is where it becomes like this, right? Because the better coach that gets the result faster becomes more trusted, and that more trusted coach gets a faster result and becomes a more trusted coach. And that relationship is just like, it goes further and further, and it's really like that. You built your actual goal may have been to build a better relationship with your athlete, and this is the tool that we use to do it. Right? That there's only three reasons anybody hires a coach, right, or a fitness professional. It's to look better, to feel better, or to perform better in sports or life. The reason they want to look better is so that they feel better. And the reason they want to perform better is so they have success, so that they feel better. So there's really only one, right? There's really only one there. And I think that perhaps that is that, like I've told the story of, like I still talk to my taekwondo instructor. I still visit him when I go home. He's come over and visited me. And I don't talk to my math teacher, right? We don't stay in touch, right? And but everybody listening to this call, you have somebody like that in your life. You have a coach or an individual who changed everything for you, right? And the real question is it you're that to someone too, right? And you're that person, and it's you owe it to have, like, this the start of your book when you're talking about you know, the legacy that went before you with the athletes, like that you had an obligation to the athlete and to the coaches before you, so not to mess this up, right? And I feel like you have an obligation as a coach to be looking at your programming and asking yourself, like, is this the best stuff I can deliver? Is this the best exercises? But the I hate saying icing on the cake, like it's the last thing, right? Because I think it's earlier, is the foundation of this might be how you communicate all of it. What if you only had fixed access equipment, right? What if you only had a chest press machine, right? All right, that's the limitation now, right? Your program and your exercise are limited. Now the coaching comes in, and that's your magic. That's your difference maker, right? Like that's the key. So it's this idea of, like, and I think I seen in the Q&A, someone said, once you polish your cueing, do you think there's significant value in remote coaching? Absolutely there is. And it's like, I'll be honest, I used to make fun of online trainers, right? How can you train someone online? Well, you know what, the technology's there, and it's better than freestyling it, and it's better than picking up my book, which is generic with no real-time feedback. So it's there, but now the coaching skill has become a bigger factor than it used to be. Not that it should have been; it should always been big, but now it's a bigger factor. And it's just like that entire like it's the perfect title. It's the language of coaching. The thing you're coaching is almost secondary. Like the fact that you came from athletic performance is, you could have been a basket. You imagine Michael Jordan trying to explain how to catch a basketball with these step-by-steps. First you go to coaching stance 1, right? Like catching stance 1, then you receive and absorb, right? Like that's how it would look if you wrote it down, right? It's a vital part of what's going forward. I think that we're gonna, and I think and it was Greg DeCenzo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, said that it was asking, will there be business opportunities there? I think so. I think some people will be afraid to come back to facilities. Like I think that there will be a change, and I think that something that I've made a mistake on in the past is, you have one-on-one training, you have small group or semi-private as we call it, and you have large group. And my original idea was to fit everyone into my favorite way of doing it, which was small group. But people like different things. Like it's not the same people. They like different things, right? And that's kind of it's the same as identifying the cue or the learning style, is that some people want to be trained in a large group. Some people will want to be trained remotely or virtually, right? They'll want to be doing that. So I think we identify from a business point of view, I'm taking a slight tangent, is that the business delivery system will expand now. It's not just here's how we train people. It's just here's how we are able to train people. You can read my free stuff on Instagram or Facebook. You can purchase one of my books. You can come to an event. You can join my gym. I can train you remotely, and so on. Right? It's the technology is empowering us right now.
Absolutely. It's interesting as I'm listening to you. The challenge here, and I don't know if you articulate this in your own head or with those you work with, but coaching is a behavior. And we as coaches know probably better than anyone how difficult behavior change is, whether it's fitness behaviors, whether it's nutrition, whether it's sleep. We live and breathe this stuff. But at the same time, I think we need to recognize that the coaching piece, especially how we coach in real time, when we're under stress, where we revert back to what's comfortable, these are behaviors as much as choosing potato chips over broccoli are behaviors. And thus, in the same way, many of those poor behaviors are invisible to the client, which is why they're coming to you. Many of our poor behaviors are invisible to us. And I think in fairness, how we coach is an invisible thing. We can't see the words. We feel the impact, but we can't always feel them and observe them as tangibly as a program on paper. So from a behavior change perspective, how can we leverage those insights to become better coaches?
I think it's just this understanding, like strategy trumps like instinct, like in the beginning, right? You've got to develop strategies, and you've got to go by the book. Like if you are working an office job every day, and you come home and you haven't been to the store, and you've got to either go to out and buy groceries to cook a healthy meal, or you can order a pizza, right? That at that moment, you've been working all day and you're tired and willpower is in a low supply, the pizza is the option. But if you had decided that at 4 p.m. every day, you're going to eat 2 pieces of string cheese and an ounce of almonds, you're not hungry when you get home. And if you make a decision that on Sundays, we're going to shop for the whole week and plan out the meals, right? These are strategies, right? That impact the behavior, right? And it's the same with behavior changes about establishing strategy. Now, does intermittent fasting work, or does eating breakfast every day work? Does low carb work? Does low fat work? They're all just strategies. The key is finding the one. If you look at all, like just on nutrition right now, if you look at all diets that's ever happened, if we control for protein intake and calories, there's no difference at all in results with any of them. So it comes down to sustainability and adherence, what the client can actually do, right? Which is a strategy. So like when under pressure as a coach, you will default to the things you do the most, which if you've not prepared yourself to understand coaching and cueing at the right point, think about this as in sport, where the cue is going to matter in real time. Like it's not just a set of an exercise where you have multiple attempts to fix it. This is in real time. You've got to get it right. But it's simple, but it doesn't make it easy. It's getting the reps in, right? You've got to get those reps in. Like you've got to. It starts as you unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you're doing, and you don't even know that you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And then the ugly part, the part that hurts the most, is conscious incompetence, when you realize you don't know what you're doing. And that's where most people revert back, because they don't want to confront it, right? Because that's the horrible thing. You're like, oh shit, I don't know anything, right?
That's when you need the strategy.
But that's the massive step forward too. You just realized that you don't know it. Prior to that, you didn't know it. And then it's conscious competence where you got to think about it. You got to think about your cues. You got to think about your behaviors. You got to think about this, right? And we're like, what do we do when this happens? And then you get to the top level where you're Michael Jordan and you just catch the ball, right? And that's the idea. But the part for everyone is when you move from that unconscious incompetence, when you move from that like blissful like ignorance to the level where you understand the holes in your game, that hurts a lot. And that's your self-defense mechanism, is to go, that's not true, and just go hide back in your cave, right? Where the reality, I've got Michael Jordan behind me right now.
I know. I had that quote on my wall when I was a kid, and I'm thinking about following suit and getting it again, because it's my favorite quote.
I've had that on my office wall for, I don't know, 20 something years, I think. Are you watching? Of course, yeah.
It's amazing. Did you, sorry, just a little tangent, because I was going to ask you about it earlier. You talk about kind of owning your craft and owning your style. Did you notice that when they were asking him about how hard he was on his teammates. And I think it was the end of episode 6 or 7. And he almost starts to cry because what I loved about that is that was so honestly him. There was no ego involved. Like, he so honestly wanted to see himself and his teammates get better. That the fact that is even thrown at him as something of a scar on his reputation almost brings him to tears, because that's how important it was to him and the success. I don't know. It's the best moment in the whole thing for me.
And they can pivot that whole thing to make him look a certain way or look another way, right? And it's the greatest gift he could give his teammates is that he gave that much of a shit about them, right? Like he cared that much that's the, you know, winning is a habit, unfortunately so is losing. And everything that he did, and that's the soundbite, I forget the exact soundbite, but he's talking about that, right? His idea of he owes it to them. There's an obligation as a teammate to bring out the best in them. And that's how I see it as a coach, right? Like, you have an obligation. I remember seeing Sugar Ray Leonard years ago, and it's interesting. You look at the mindset of the true greats, and they were talking to him, and they said, like, Ray, if you were to lose this fight, if you were to take a beating, and he's like, no, next question. And they're like, you won't talk about that? And he's like, nah. And he goes, well, why not? He goes, because that's not true. And it looked like he's just arrogant and wouldn't talk about defeat, but it was beyond that. He couldn't comprehend it. Like, he couldn't rehearse it in his head.
It didn't have a spot in his mind.
Unable to do that. And I think there's a story of Jordan, I think it was a Gatorade or a Pepsi commercial, where he had to miss the shot. And it took like 8 takes because he would correct. He would be like, I'm off center, and as he would shoot, he would fix it, right, and make the basket. But it just was this idea. But it's that relentless idea of, and that's where that quote, people don't use that one as much, that I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, I want to throw just this idea back at you as we're coming to the end here. And again, if there's any burning questions, we have a couple hyper-specific ones on there that maybe are for another webinar at another time. But if you have any comments or questions kind of related to what Alwyn and I are on, please chuck them up. But Alwyn, my key moment was this, and I'd love it if you've had a similar one. I realized it was 2009. It was the year I took over the NFL Combine program, and it was a cold January morning on a Monday, and I was running this acceleration prep session. And all of a sudden, I just had this out-of-body experience where I stepped back and I saw myself coaching. And I saw this guy that was yelling these pristine cues before, during, after. I was coaching the heck out of it, dotted I, cross T, surgical precision. But I realized in that moment that in my own head, all my attention was on the program. It was executing timekeeping. It was executing all the cues I had prepackaged that had been passed down from that one generation to the next. I had my attention on the program, not the person. And it was like in that moment, I was rattled into reality. And I saw the people in front of me for the first time. And I realized nothing I was saying was getting in. It was flying all over the place, but it was a one-way street. And as you talked about earlier, it's input-output. It's two-way. And so for me, I had that pinnacle moment. I'm wondering for you, did you have a moment like that where you realized it's about this person in front of you? And even though that is so obvious, I don't think in our behaviors as coaches, we always represent that that's how we're approaching it.
That I do. It's funny you say that, as I can remember being like tired when I was young, like opened the gym early and working late, and I'd first moved to New York, and just this idea of getting through the list of exercises was the objective, right? Just get down the list, and when we get to here, we get going, right? And I remember it was years later actually. I was when we'd opened Results Fitness, which by the way is 20 years this week. We opened.
Congratulations!
I was hoping to celebrate it with actually being open this week. But I remember the session because someone took a picture, right? And there's a volleyball player, a high school volleyball player that I didn't mess up too much, because now she's went through college, was a college coach, and is now a mom with kids and is still in touch with me. So I didn't mess it up too much. But the picture's me like this. as she's doing the exercise. And I remember after it giving a correction, and she's like, all right, sorry, coach. And just this disappointment in her face. And I'm like, this body language, first of all, is negative, like reserved. It looks horrible. But I was trying my best. It was unconscious. And then the first thing I did was, yeah, here's what I want you to do. And she's like, oh, sorry, like she's doing something wrong, right? I'm doing something wrong. So you'll see pictures of me. I joke about it. My coaching stance is bent over with my hands on my knees. If I don't know what to do, this is where I go, because I look like I'm like, if I'm not super engaged here, I'm gonna look super engaged, right? That was my first thing, is I'm gonna fake it till I make it. And then I always, without it being like fake, like great job, like there's always a reinforcement first before there's a correction. But it was that moment where I realized that I look inconvenienced with this athlete, right? I look like, why can't you just do this exercise? Like, I see how it looks, and that wasn't how I was feeling. But as a visual learner, that's what she sees. And then the first thing I say to her is something she's doing wrong, and that's what she hears. And her instinct is, I'm failing this guy. I can't do anything right. That's not what a coach is for. Right. And I can remember that moment that I'm like I've got to, I still need to correct the thing. Right. But I need to learn how to do that better. And then one of the we call them aha moments at Results Fitness, the breakthrough thing. That was one for mine. And that lateral raise example that you did in Chicago, I want to say maybe 08. It's a while ago, right?
08, yeah.
That
08 or 09.
I'm like, poof. Right, like it's just one of those like a trick, right? It's so dramatic, it looks like a trick, right? But then I couldn't replicate it immediately, right? And it's just one of those, you're like, that's me. I have to show these clients that I'm so smart. I'll give them all my cues, right? And it's just that breakthrough where you're like, I'm not like, it's not about me. Like the perfect coach is the end of the original Karate Kid, where Daniel's getting lifted up by the way, which is the Los Angeles All Valley under 18 point karate championship sells out, but a Clippers game you can still get tickets, by the way, right? But it's the hottest ticket in town. But at the end of that, they're throwing him up in the air, and he won, and Miyagi's just in the background like nodding, and like that's where the coach is supposed to be, over there, right? Not in the middle of the field. And I still think that. I remember that I remember those two things, that my objective is not to transform this client or take like the journey is a series of workouts, right? And that workout is a series of exercises, and that sequence of exercises is different sets, and that set is a number of reps. And my goal is not to get through this. My goal is to impact that rep, right? Change that rep. And if I change that rep, I change that set, and then I change that exercise, and I change that workout, and I change that result of that program. But it starts with that. My goal was not to get through the checklist. My goal was to impact that moment, even if it meant not getting through the checklist right now, because it was more important to get this right? But everything is to how I stood, how I was perceived here, hands in pockets. You'll get your pockets sewn up if you do that at Results Fitness. You stand with your hands in your pockets as a coach, right? Like I don't want to see that, because there's a perception there, right? So that I remember that this idea that like I'd written this great program, and it just was like getting through it, and just like and the look on this girl's face, thinking that she'd failed me when I'd given the cue, you know.
And to do that, you had to look up, either literally or in your mind's eye. And so I think if we were to give one piece of advice to everyone listening and to pay it forward, is, are you looking up from the program and at the person? Because in there lies all the information you need to know how to get better. They will tell you with their verbal and their nonverbal. You said that early on. I'd like to end with a quote I found of yours, which I really like because there's levels to it. And, we didn't get to talk about your new book that is coming out, but you've mentioned mine, more times than you should have. So Secrets of Successful Program Design, a how-to guide for busy fitness professionals. It'll be your 10th book. You're co-authoring it with Craig Rasmussen. When does that come out, Alan? Just so we don't forget.
Well, right now, I think it's a little bit delayed just because of the nature of everything right now. So I'm just going to say by the end of this year.
Okay.
Right. That's the hope for, and it's that idea that you know, hopefully it can help some people. You know,
Absolutely.
like it's I have this I hatred's too strong a word when people say, oh, that's Mike Boyle stuff, that's Mark Verstegen stuff, right? It's always bugged me when I hear that about me, because I want to be a teacher. Anything
Absolutely.
I've ever taught is not my stuff anymore. It's now everybody's stuff, and it's their job to take it and go further than I have.
What I love, just to speak on it briefly, is that you're really honing in on this idea of a training system. And for me, having worked at Exos for over a decade, training system is part of the vernacular. But obviously, within our industry, training systems versus singular workouts is still a bridge that we need to build. And so I think this book is going to be essential for personal trainers, strength coaches, physical therapists alike to start to think about workouts in a sequence of a training system. So no doubt it's going to add tremendous value to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's the idea, is that if we're doing like sets of 5 today, like we're doing squats and it's sets of 5, and we do 6, what is the impact of that change 3 months from now?
Yeah.
Now, if there's no impact, then the program is garbage in the first place.
Yep.
Right? Because that's 20% more volume right there. Like there's got to be, what does that mean in the next stage? Right? And I'll have this with my young coaches. Client comes in and they're like, oh, I can't do this. I've got a knee thing going on right now. I can't do this. And I'm like, you can't change this exercise on the fly, right? Because there's a knock-on effect with this. So right now the answer is, okay, we can't do that. I'll need a little more information about your knee, but I'm not pulling a substitution out of nowhere, because I've got to substitute the next workout then, and then the next phase and the next phase, right? So I'm not saying that we can never like change things, but the idea being is that if we can change it on the fly, then it didn't matter what we had planned anyway, right? And that's the idea, is that you have to do that.
No doubt it'll be a huge addition. So as I said, I'd like to finish with a quote and then give you a second just to share where people can find out a bit more about you, Alan. You've been amazing today, as you always are. But you said this. You said, I truly believe and practice the principle of the slight edge. I just need one idea from a book or a magazine article to make a difference. As a result, I invest in everything in my field. Notice that I said invest, not buy or spend. They are negative words. You have to train yourself to use language that makes you act differently. Man, Alan, beautiful point to reflect on yourself. And I would echo, you have to train yourself to use language that makes a difference in your clients as well. And I know you agree. So you've been absolutely a legend, as you always are. Can you just share with the audience how they can find out a bit more about you, Results Fitness, and the Results Fitness University?
Cheers, Nick. So resultsfitnessuniversity.com is the sort of hub for our online education. We have an online website, resultsfitnessinnercircle.com, where we put a lot of courses up, stuff. It's a membership site. And probably the easiest way to reach me is either DM me through Instagram or Facebook. I try my best to get back to people as much as I can. Slide into my DMs.
Right. Alan, man, for me, you're a legend in my book, and you're a legend because you are one of the most authentic, sincere individuals. Say what you will about coaches, I know. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you do for myself and for others. And it's been great to have you on our first coaching conversation, and hopefully we'll bring you back on again once the book is out.
Thank you. And thank you for the book and for bringing that to our profession. That's going to leave a dent in the universe.
It's a beautiful thing. We're all trying to do our part. So with that, we'll let all you start to sign off. Thank you again. If you haven't signed up for the languageofcoaching.com, we'll be doing more of these. And I'm going to start the global book club on the language of coaching later this month. So if you're on the email list, you'll be first to be notified. But thank you again for all of you that have spent the last hour and a half with us. It is an honor, and go make the world a better place. Cheers.
You're better than everybody.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, lad.
Bye-bye.